What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to New Twist Radio. We have a special interview today, and it's a man that is no stranger to New Twist Radio. He's been actually around. We've spoken with him since almost the beginning of New Twist Radio, way back in the early, I guess you would call it the 2010s, the 20 teens, and most recently as last year. I think we speak at least once a year about a book or something that he's got going on. He's multi-talented, multifaceted writer, producer, all types of things going on. I know I'm not saying enough about what he does because he does so many things. But we have Mr. Rob Bell from 906 Multimedia here with us once again. Mr. Bell, how you doing, man? It's been about a year. How you been?
Thank you, sir. Let me first say thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk on this platform. You have, or I should say, I'm with you since the beginning of my career with regard to the productions, the books, and all the other things that 906 Multimedia and Satin Down Productions have put on. I think I first came on your show when we did our first play back in Philadelphia, and
Mm-hmm.
you and Miss West gave
Yes.
myself and Miss Bell our platform to promote our play. And as part of that platform, we were very successful with that play. So I want to thank you and I appreciate it. And ever
Eh,
since then, man, you've been reaching out to me and we've been doing our thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Neutrals Radio has taken many forms since then, but one thing that's been consistent is we got to talk to Mr. Rob Bell from 906 Multimedia every now and then to make sure we keeping in touch with what he's doing. Actually, back then it was the New Twist Show, and now it's become a station and a multimedia platform in its own. And you are the CEO of 906 Multimedia, author, producer. Um, Phil, help me out because I know there's many titles. Director,
You got
right?
it. I mean, director, publisher, and
Publisher.
that's enough right there. We do print media, we we do live performances, stage plays, we do video, we shoot video, and we try to do as much in terms of multimedia as we can. And all the media that we do, we try to make it relevant to the African American community with regards to what we can do to try to help our brothers and sisters move forward. And anything that we can do in terms of uplifting community is what we are about in all of the genres that we use.
Absolutely, and it's very much appreciated. It's very much needed, and right now, we're just going to get to the new. But last time we spoke, it was. Oh, I have the book right there. Hold on, where is it? The last book was. What was the last book called? I'm sorry, I have a fan in my way, but I have it right there on my shelf. I was just looking at it.
Well,
The last
I think my last book was 420.
420. It was
Um,
420, and then
and
before that
before,
was
and
when
then
Black
that
becomes blue.
was when Black when
Right.
Black meets Blue, right?
When Black meets blue, and then so and
And
then
so, and then we did an erotic thriller called Multiples.
and now we have 911. How to stop the bleeding in the community. Well, tell me a little bit about that book.
And well, how to stop the bleeding in the Black community is
I'm sorry. Is it in the black
so,
community?
I'm sorry, is how to stop the bleeding in the Black community.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem. Um, you know, and it's kind of funny because I wrote How to Stop the Bleeding in the Black Community I started writing it about 4 to 5 months ago before the pandemic, before the protests, before all the social unrest that we are experiencing today. And when I published it, it hit like right now.
Mm.
It is so relevant based on the information that is in the book that is almost scary. Um, I wrote uh, How to Stop the Bleeding. First of all, people get kind of confused about the title. When they read 911, they automatically think about the tragedy in New York. and the planes hitting the World Trade Center. And that's really not what it's all about. It's more about when you get in trouble and you need some medical assistance, what do? You call 911. And so 911 is a call to the Black community because, in my estimation, the Black community is bleeding and needs to be repaired and needs to be fixed. And the information that I provide in how to stop the bleeding in Black community is not so much about what people can do to come in and help and save us. It's more about what we can do for ourselves and what we have to do in terms of taking a step back and stop being so reliant on the government, so reliant on the politicians that are out here, so reliant on all these social services programs. We need to really take a hard look at some of the social ills that are occurring in our community, and we need to fix that. We
So
certainly
let's pause on that for a minute because I'm gonna get some
okay,
of your thoughts on that. Because we
okay,
on New Twist Radio, a couple of shows, and we talk about that quite a bit. Um,
right.
and in your book, how do you address how the Black community basically, and to sum up what you said, to be self-sufficient in a sense? How do we
Well,
do
I think we are not self-sufficient. I think we have grown to depend on the government, i.e., government checks every month, Section 8, social services programs coming in and quote unquote putting us in training programs to try to put us in employment situations. We are and can be self-sufficient based on the economics that we have within our community. You know, we spend most of our money outside of our community. And as a result, those monies go to tax dollars to other ethnic groups. Those monies go to tax dollars to other communities. And those monies go to everyone else except the things that are occurring in our community. We can kind of change our mindset and start to, number one, think about creating our own businesses in our own communities and spending our own money in our own businesses, then we can keep our tax dollar in our community and we can begin to create jobs within our community. We can begin to create programs for our elderly and our young people. We can begin to start creating recreation and social arts programs for our young people. And we basically can become self sufficient. I'm a follower of the Marcus Garvey movement and the Malcolm X movement, where back in the 60s, Malcolm X was kind of training us and trying to make us understand that in order for us to be flourishing as a community, we need to start taking care of ourselves and stop, again, relying on other people to come in. That was in the 60s. It's 2020, and we still have not gotten that message. You know, people get money, they get their government checks, they work, and the first thing they do is go outside of the community and they buy things to make them look good, feel good, and act good. They
well,
want
let's take a look at that.
right,
Of course, we all know, and everybody knows, or everybody should know. Not everybody in the community is on the system, but almost everybody in the community has to go outside of the community to
that's
make
correct.
purchases.
That's correct.
Whether it could be your grocery store, it could be your clothing store, it could
Right,
be where you buy your sneakers, it could be where you buy your medicine,
right,
whatever the case may be.
right.
And you know, there was a time, like I always think about Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Black Wall Street,
Hmm.
where the Black community was that community in itself was, they had everything they needed right there. They wanted to go on vacation, they had hotels,
Right,
they had hospitals, they had everything they needed right there. Of course, we all know
right.
what happened with that situation, but you know,
Hmm.
it's almost like, why haven't we been able to do that again? I mean, it once I'm kind of bouncing around, but it was once the once segregation became illegal, we kind of it was like, oh, now we can go over there and spend our money instead of keeping it in the community and building
Right.
our own community. Actually, at the time that we're doing this, this is the National Blackout Day from the Black Coalition,
Right.
saying that nobody goes out of the community and spends their money outside the community today.
Right. Right.
But if we did that, and to the points you were making, if we were able to continue to do that, we build up the Black community, make the Black community stronger. And it's not a thing of you want to shun any of these other communities, but we're the only people that doesn't really have a community. We
That's
have
correct.
places where we live, but we don't have a community.
Right. Have a community.
And,
I think
and
what's happening. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
I think what's happened with us is we've been brainwashed to believe that if it's white, it's right, and if it's black, we got to take a step back because we are quote unquote unreliable, we are not sufficient, and we're just not good enough. And so we take this stance, and there's so much self hatred within our community that we don't believe in each other and understand that if we collectively come together, we can put some things together to make it happen. There's a lot of millionaires within our community. Like you said earlier, everybody in the Black community does not get a government check. But there are certainly a lot of African Americans that are millionaires that can contribute to the uplifting of the African American community. W.E.B. Du Bois said that there is or should be a faction within our communities called the Talented 10. And what he meant by that was there's should be 10% of the 90% of the African American people that really need to step up to the plate and make sure that the other 90% gets taken care of. We certainly have enough of that 10% within the African American communities, with our entertainers, with our athletes, with our millionaires, with our entrepreneurs, to really take a hard look at what we can do to bring those 90% of the people up. But what has happened is we've been brainwashed. We've been taught to be selfish and adopt the idea of, well, I got mine. I worked hard. I bust my butt. You got to do the same thing, and you got to get yours. And although that is a noble cause and a noble kind of idea and ideology to follow, the reality is that everybody can't do that. And so no one really cares about coming into our community to help us. All they want to do is come into our community and put a band-aid on the things that are the social ills that occur, especially the politicians, and they want to get the votes. And once they get the votes, they turn their back on us, and we're right back into the same situation. However, we have a responsibility ourselves to not rely on those politicians to come into our community and help us. We have to understand how important our education is for ourselves. And so we have to teach our people the importance of education. We have the ability to clean our own neighborhoods up and make them look viable and livable so that we don't have gentrification that occurs in our community. We let our property values drop so that outsiders and strangers can come in and buy our properties. We have the ability to collectively pull our money and start to develop stores and start to develop businesses. There are so many talented and smart people in our community that have the wherewithal to do the things that we need to do, but we have been brainwashed to be selfish and to just adapt this whole "I got mine, you got to get yours" kind of
And
attitude. And those are some of the things that I talk about.
right, and
Go ahead.
to speak to the brainwashing for some of the people that may not understand, that brainwashing goes back centuries beyond you and I. That started
Yes.
centuries ago, and it's a
Yes.
hard thing to break. Speaking and going back to the book, like you said, the you put that in the book. You put it's just many different things in the book that you address. And I do want to go back to some of the things that are in the book, but I wanted to ask, and it's almost an obvious question, your motivations for writing this particular book, because I mean, you had the When Black Becomes Blue, as a former officer here in the city of Philadelphia. And you were giving
actually up in Rochester.
Oh, I'm sorry, in Rochester, New York. I'm
Actually,
sorry.
that's right.
But you had
Go ahead.
you talk about your experiences and all of your books have had a personal touch to them. Have had, whether it might be a fiction or nonfiction book. There's always a personal touch in there. With this book in particular, is it more of a guideline type of book, or is it more of a story book?
That's a great question because it's in between.
Okay.
As a writer, and I think as a good writer, you write about you write about your personal experiences,
Right.
and that gives you the opportunity to be real about the stories that you can convey to your readers. I purposely didn't make it a how-to-do guideline book, but at the same time, I didn't make it a book that's kind of telling people what to do. I wrote about my own personal. A lot of it is my own personal experience, personally and professionally. I've done a lot of things. I've worked law enforcement. I've worked corrections. I've worked community service. I've worked mental health. I've worked advocacy, and I've done it all in the Black community. And on top of that, I'm an African American man who comes from an African American family who grew up in Philadelphia. My people,
and also,
the root of my people.
And also, as I always say in every interview we say, you also went to an HBCU.
Went to the
Probably
HBCU, and I'm
the
glad
best
you
HBCU.
Yeah, we got to get a Hawks a shout out, University
Absolutely.
of Maryland, sure. And I have to tell people that my man Jay and I are alumnus of UMES. As is my niece, as is my grandson who is going there right now. So and it's great that you bring that up because prior to me going to UMES, I didn't fashion myself as being an activist, but being around African American men and women and professors from all over the country, I had to develop this kind of mantra in terms of, what is my legacy and what am I going to do once I graduate from college and get out here in the streets? And so I went to school to be a teacher, first of all. I never knew that I would, flow into all the areas that I flowed into. And it was actually great because it gave me an opportunity to experience and see everything. So the things that I write about in this book is not from another textbook. It's not from a classroom. It's not from any statistical experience. It's from a personal and professional experience. And it's things that I see and continue to deal with in the African American community that I think need to be fixed. The community is bleeding. And that's why I named the book the title that I did. I say some things that hurt people's feelings in the book because I get real about relationships between mothers and their sons. I get real about relationships between mothers and their daughters and how they are raising daughters and raising sons to not be progressive and positive, but they coddle them and they restrict them and they hold them back. And when they become adults, they get involved in these relationships that become toxic. They get involved in relationships that turn into domestic violence. And those are some of the ills that hurt our community. For example, one of my chapters talk about how mothers treat their sons like their boyfriends. And I tell women, your son is not your boyfriend. Your son is your son. And when you start to treat your son like your boyfriend, to a degree, he starts to disrespect you because he doesn't understand what his place is in that relationship. And when he grows up and he becomes a man, he starts to disrespect other women. And as a result, domestic violence occurs. And they go out and they start to have children with these women. And they don't take it serious in terms of them being fathers and being providers. And now we have women in our community who are unwedded and taking care of these children by themselves. They start to lean on the system. The system takes advantage of them, and it becomes a vicious cycle. So those are some of the things that I talk about in the book that I want to take a hard look at and start to change. I'm not trying to be an idealist, but I am being a realist. And if you want to start to change the cycle in the Black community, it's not going to start with my generation, your generation. It's going to start with that younger generation. And that's about socialization and education and raising kids the way they're supposed to be raised. I was fortunate to have a parent that understood that back in the day. And I'm not saying that I turned out to be perfect because I certainly had my serious issues, and I write about them in some of my books. And you and I we've talked about that in the past. And so when I talk about drug addiction, for example, I don't write about that based on what I've heard. I write about that based on what I've experienced. And I'm not ashamed to talk that because it's a real situation for me. I'm an addict. I've been clean for 17 years, but in going through that experience, it really showed me how and what people are going through in our community with regard to self-medication and self-medicating, and the side of selling drugs and the side of being addicted to drugs, and how all of it has a dramatic effect on the downward spiral in our community. But we have the ability to change that if we change the ideology and the attitudes that we try to adopt. So that's just one example, some of the information that I give in the book. So the short answer to your first question is no, it's not a how-to book. And yes, it is based on some personal and professional experiences.
Well, absolutely. I mean, those are, when you give personal examples, it always gives a certain type of what's the word I'm looking for? A certain type of
authenticity.
Authenticity. Thank you. That's the exact word I was looking for.
Yeah.
A certain type of authenticity to the information.
It's real. It's real. What I didn't want to do, I don't mean to cut you off, but what I didn't want to do is come off as being a know-it-all preacher and saying, well, this is what you got to do because that's what I think you should do. And in order for you to get better with what you need to get better with, you need to follow my example. I don't want to come off like that. I'm just like you, man. I'm a regular cat, And what makes the difference between me and you is I have maybe a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more experience based on what I've went through in life, not based on my the fact that I have a college education or I think I'm better than you. When I was young, I lived in West Oakland. They call it Uptown, and I used to always get rattled for that. Where you from, dude? I'm from West Oakland. Oh, you one of them Uptown cats. Which meant you thought we were better than everybody else, and it was really never like that because if you would have came to my house, you would have saw that it certainly was not like that. But so I never try to come off as being that guy, but I am an activist. I proudly say that. My brother gives me the label Rob X jokingly, but he says that with sincerity because what he's trying to say is I'm the kind of cat that wants to see the rest of our people get their programs together and come up out of what we are involved in. Violence in our community is off the chain, man, and we got to do something about that. And it's about education, and it's about getting into the mindset of these young brothers and sisters out here and getting them to understand that we have to stop that if we want to change our community. We've been entrusted it for 400 years. It's about time to change. How can you let one white man who kills a black man in Minnesota cause all these demonstrations and social unrest, but from what I understand, Chicago last weekend, there were 90 people who were shot, 12 who were killed, and not one person protested about that. In Philly, there was X amount of people killed. And from my understanding, a 5-year-old getting killed or shot, 5-year-old getting killed. Not one person protested about that. Here in Atlanta, we had an 8-year-old girl get shot and killed the night before. And not one person protested against that. There's something wrong with that.
Now I can remember a time speaking just here in Philly, and I believe you were probably in Philly at the time as well. I can remember a time where a local radio station, I'm not going to put the name up, but a local radio station would run the campaign of stop the violence, peace on the streets, and they would have rallies. They would have peace rallies in the city.
Yes,
We're
and I
not
was involved.
seeing
I
much
was
of that.
involved in a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, I can
Yeah.
remember them happening, but we don't see that now. One case, one not case, like one incident that happened over the weekend, that kind of affected me. Not personally, I didn't know the kid, but it affected me. It was close to home. A kid that went to Frankfurt High School was killed. 15-year-old kid riding his bike around the corner from where I am right now, not too far from where I am right now, in the Overbrook section. He was killed.
Right.
Played football, and all I could think of was some of the kids that I coached were at the high school where I coached baseball, and I'm like, the same age. And then there was an incident I heard about in D.C.
Right.
where a young man, I think he was 8. He was young, 8 years old, maybe. Another football player was killed. And I see friends from the D.C. Maryland area posting about that, and that these are the things that I feel, and I'm sure you feel, and there are a lot of people feel, that we need to stop these things, because now, we have the people going out protesting, saying Black Lives Matter, and we're protesting, the police brutality and the civil systemic racism and things of that nature.
Right.
And then there's counter protesters to our protest that are saying certain things, and then when we have a weekend like this, it adds fuel to their fire, to the counter protest fire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I saw videos
It
today.
says this is why. Yeah. This is why they don't need to be out there, because all this, that they're doing is really off and up, and it's just a waste of everybody's time. And we know that that's not true. We have to see, as African Americans, we are too sensitive. We get upset when people call us on our stuff, especially people in within our own community. When somebody says, what you're doing is wrong, they'll come back and say, well, that's none of your business, or the mantra in every black home is, what happens in this house stays in this house. We know that in a lot of these houses, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on with our young people, with domestic violence, with a sexual innuendo with our boys and with our girls. And when you put young people in situations like that and they have no outlet, they become angry. And when they get out in the streets and they're angry, and you put a gun in their hands, they use that anger in other ways. They don't take it out on the people in their homes or the people in their families. They take it out on the people in the streets. And so you have to ask yourself, why are these young people so angry? And when you peel that onion back to the core of what's going on with them, they have to go through a lot of stuff in their personal lives. We got kids going to school hungry every morning. We got kids going to school that don't have any clothes and get teased by the other students in the schools. We got kids that are just have no direction. Wake up in the morning. Can you imagine what it's like to wake up in the morning and your mom or your dad's not even there to fix you breakfast and have you get ready to go to school? You don't know what to do. You're a kid. You get angry about that. And so you go to school and you act out on that. And then the school's going to label you as being a special education student, and they want to take care of it with medication, which further exacerbates the program. And now we got thousands of kids, thousands of young people out there with anger issues that create a lot of the violence that goes on in our community. And what we want to do is we want to put a band-aid on it by creating these police commissions, by creating these social service programs to help counsel kids. And we want to be reactive instead of proactive. And we got to get better with that in our community. We can't expect anybody from outside of the community to come in and do that, because at the end of the day, those folks go back home to their community. They deal with all the great things that are going on. And our kids have to go back to the same communities that they come from. I know when I worked mental health and I was a counselor, it would hurt my heart to end my day because I know my kids were going home to situations that were horrific, and there was not a whole lot that I could do about that because I was only one person, or I only had a team of men and women who seriously had their best interests in heart at heart. And then, we kind of started the whole thing all over again the next day. But between the hours of 5 and 7 in the morning, who knows what these young people were going through.
Yeah, really,
So
really.
that's
I
a lot.
mean, that is a lot. There's a lot with there's a lot to deal with from their standpoint, a lot to deal with from your standpoint. I mean, working in that industry.
Absolutely.
Once again, we're talking with
Absolutely.
Robert Bell of 906 Multimedia, friend of the network's been with us many a times. He's got another book that he has put out, 911: How to Stop the Bleeding in the Black Community. And we're just here having a conversation, man, talking about some of the things. I think it should be mentioned again that you actually wrote this book before the pandemic, before the killing, the
Yes.
murder of George Floyd, before the killing, the murder of Breonna Taylor,
Yes.
before the
Yes.
killing and murder of
Yes.
Ahmaud Arbery, before all of that,
Yes.
before all these things happened,
Before all
you
of
you
that,
wrote you
before
wrote
all
you
of these
wrote this
things
book,
happen, it's that.
and then
Right.
and right now we had a situation, of course, with the pandemic. People were in the house. People now
Right.
it's summertime.
Right.
People coming out of the house and people just have been wilding out. And
Right.
we,
Right.
we we just talked about that. But like I said, you have a book coming out, or you have a book that's out now, 911:
Mm-hmm.
How to Stop the Bleeding in the
Mm-hmm.
Black Community. Tell the people where they can find this book, where they can purchase this book.
Well, before we do that, let me just throw this in here real quick,
Okay,
Jay.
all right.
When Black Meets Blue, I wrote when Black Meets Blue from two perspectives. First perspective being an African American police officer working in basically an all white police department, and in my naivety, wanting to come into that department and bridge the gap between the African American community and black and the police, not just black police, but just bridge the gap. Uh,
Mhm.
it, it was difficult because what people don't understand is that police brutality is systemic in police departments across the country. It starts from the first day that you come into the academy until the end of your career as a police officer. And secondly, one of the things that I said before I even wrote How to Stop the Bleeding in the Black Community is that this is going to happen again. Rodney King happened in 1992, and I said, after that, this is going to happen again, again, and again. And it has. And unfortunately, with these last three killings, it's going to happen again because
Now
this
let me
whole.
let me stop you real quick. Are you
Mhm.
saying, to go back to what you said, that the systemic racism within the department starts?
Right.
Are you saying? Explain to me how you are you saying that you're in a sense trained to in the black community treat you not treat them in a certain way, but to
Well,
carry a
well,
situation?
it's not that you're trained to treat African Americans in a certain way. It's you're trained to be a gladiator, basically, for lack of a better word.
Mm,
And in the academy, there's less training on diffusing situations that occur in the community as opposed to going in and gladiating, for lack of a better word, your way out of a situation. You are trained that when you go out in the street every day, people are trying to kill you. And so you adapt this persona that if somebody's going to try to kill me, I'm going to kill them first. And so that's your whole attitude when you're out on the street. There's no sense of community building. There's no sense of trying to understand the culture in terms of where people come from. There's no sense of trying to get people to feel comfortable with the fact that you are supposed to be there to serve them and protect them, as opposed to busting their heads up and locking them up. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is you are trained to provide the prison industrial complex with bodies because that creates jobs for people. And so, as a police officer in law enforcement, you are trained to always be on the offensive and not the defensive. And so, as a result, the type of videos that you see in the academy, the type of training that you receive in terms of your firearms training and your unarmed training and your EVOC training and everything that you do when you are preparing to go out there in the street is suggesting to you that when you go out and you get in that police car, you don't have time to be no damn social worker. You don't have time to be nobody's mother or father. Your job is to go out there and keep people in check. And especially when you go in the Black community, because we all know that as African American men, we're monsters, we're criminals, we're aggressive, we're on drugs. And so if I'm a police officer and I have this about who this Black man is before I even get to know him, that's how I'm going to handle the situation. Because if you didn't think like that, how can you sit on a man's neck for 8 minutes knowing he's dying and have no thought process of letting that man up so he can live? That's your whole persona. And so that is indicative. And I'm not saying all police officers are like that, because I certainly wasn't like that. But the training that we see is training you to be a gladiator. It's not training you to be a public servant.
And
That's what I mean by
in that particular situation, it was it was it's even deeper, because to find out that they actually work together. You know what I mean? At the when
yeah,
to find out that they work
at a
together
club,
at
at
a
a
club,
club.
at a nightclub. And
Right.
and we're not here to talk
And
about that situation in particular,
and
but
to
it's just,
solidify
yeah.
what I right. Just real quick, to solidify what I just said, there were two officers out of the four that had only been on the job for a couple of days.
Wow,
Okay,
really?
so we're talking about guys who just got out of the police academy that were so socialized in police culture that they didn't have enough damn sense to say to that police officer, "Hey man, you're killing him. Get off his neck." They would never say that. Why? Because they've been socialized within the culture of law enforcement to always back up your brother and make sure that you don't go against that, even if it's at the expense of killing somebody. And that's what happened. So I just wanted to point that out because people have a disconnect when it comes to why police officers do what they do. And incidentally, I'm writing another book about that right now. So speak, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. But that's where we are with this. So to get my book, you go to Amazon.com. You put in 911, how to stop the bleeding in the Black community. The cover will prompt up. It's $9.99. You click on the cover and just follow the prompts if you have an Amazon account. And you order your book. Your book will probably get to you in about 2 to 3 days, and you're good. If you don't have an Amazon account, you can email me at Rob, ROBL, as in Lincoln, BELL, 906 at gmail.com. Give me your address, give me your Cash App name, send me your money. And because it's a Cash App experience, it's going to cost you about $14 as opposed to the $9.99 because of shipping and handling, and me having to ship that out to your location. And as soon as I get your money, I will directly ship your book to you. The sales have been doing well. And please understand this. I didn't write this book to make money. I wrote this book because I wanted to get the information out to our community. Because once again, I'm a social activist. My whole persona is about teaching and educating people in our community so that we can get better with what we do. And so that's the deal. I appreciate brothers like yourself who give me the platform in the media to be able to give this information out and give people an idea and have a better understanding of what we're trying to do here. It's just not me. I have about 4 other people that work for 906 Multimedia, and as the president and the leader of the group, it is my duty to make sure that the information that we put out in all the mediums that we use, be it print media, be it video, be it performing arts or music. It is my leadership, my direction to make sure that that media and all the information is about the uplifting of the African American people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Robert Bell, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing this with us, for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, and
Thank you,
as
sir.
always, just for being who you are, man. And of course, I wish you all a continued success. Tell Miss Lynn I said hello,
I
and
certainly will.
you know what
She,
I'm saying.
gives
And when
you,
y'all,
she gives you her blessing.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Next time we gotta have her on too. We
Yeah,
gotta
we
have her
definitely,
on too.
definitely do that. And
It's been,
if you're ever down in the ATL, brother, please contact me. I got enough room for you and your wife to stay with us. You ain't got to stay in no hotel. Get some home cooked meals, and you just come out and enjoy the South, brother. Enjoy the ATL. So
hey man,
definitely, if you ever come down, let me know.
that sounds good to me. Well, once again, I want to thank you for being with us here, and like I said, much continued success, and of course, keep me posted on the things you got going on.
I
That
certainly will.
is that is Mr. Robert Bell of 906 Multimedia, y'all. Make sure you pick up that book, 911: How to Stop the Bleeding in the Black Community, and you can pick that up on Amazon for $9.99. Y'all make sure y'all download the New Twist Radio app from the Google Play Store and follow New Twist Radio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at New Twist Radio. Of course, newtwistradio.com is running 24/7. All right. We'll talk to y'all next time. Click on another video that we have too. Just, and subscribe to our YouTube too. All right. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Thank you, Jay. Have a good night.